Good afternoon, Namaste. Welcome back, everybody, to our Day 2 Session 4. I am Satya Pulkuri, your host for this session. I am currently Research Associate for the forum. In the previous sessions of our Decoding the Idea of Communist China conference as a part of our 2.5 hour series, we have focused on decoding the Chinese mindset, its territorial and maritime approach, and its economy. Today, our fourth session will be on deciphering China's defense capabilities. So without any further ado, I extend a warm welcome to our session chair, Lieutenant General Vinod Bhatia, Param Visishta Seva Medal, Ati Visishta Seva Medal, Sena Medal, superannuated after 40 years of distinguished service in the Army as the Director General Military Operations, DGMO, one of the most important functionaries of the army. As a DGMO, he was directly responsible for talks with his counterpart in Pakistan to ensure a sustained ceasefire, a first of its kind, and was much appreciated by the national polity. His advisory skills in the strategic arena have played an inseparable part in designing and implementing numerous policies for the Indian Army. He was instrumental in giving the much needed focus to capability development and capacity enhancement along our northern borders and effective management of line of actual control and line of control. Now, let's welcome our key speakers. We have Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar, Commodore Shrikant Deshmukh, Air Marshal Anil Khosla, and our next speaker, Commodore Vijesh K. Garg. We all are delighted to have you all today. Now, I hand over the floor to Session Chair. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Satya. Thank you very much. Jai Hind, everybody. So nice to be on the Indic Research Forum's platform. Always a pleasure, always a learning experience, especially with the panel, eminent, distinguished, and knowledgeable panel we have today. I must compliment the Indic Research Forum for conceptualizing, conducting this very important webinar, 2.5 front war, especially when we talk of decoding China. Unfortunately, with the Chinese taking advantage of the COVID in about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, on the 4th of May 2020, following the dictum of Sun Tzu, amidst chaos, there's opportunity, went and did the forward deployment along the line of actual control. Thereafter, we did pay attention to the Chinese aggression along the LAC, but then events overtook us. Especially in August last year, we had Afghanistan's withdrawal, so the world's focus shifted to Afghanistan, and thereafter in February, this on 24th of February, Ukraine, and this interest in the what's happening along the northern borders, especially the interest dwindled, and our focus shifted somewhere else. So I'm really thankful to the Indic Research Forum to bringing the focus back onto China and to trying and understanding China. Now, we had 3 sessions yesterday. Unfortunately, I was busy with the offline program. I couldn't attend that. Very interesting sessions that I look forward to recording. But today we have a session on decoding or deciphering China's military capabilities. We have a very interesting panel, very knowledgeable panel. First, we have General Rajan Kochhar, a fellow soldier, who will be speaking to us on the military capabilities of China. He is. I don't think he needs an introduction in this forum. At least none of the panelists on this session need any introduction. In any case, all well known, well respected, well regarded. Each one an intellectual, each one a practitioner. And then we have Commodore Deshmukh. He'll be speaking to us on the naval capabilities. Thank you very much. I've heard you earlier many times. It's always been a pleasure listening to you. Air Marshal Anil Khosla, a friend and a colleague, go back a long way. We've done a number of things together. Retired as the Vice Chief of the Air Staff, no better man than him to tell us about the PLA Air Force capabilities. And then we have Commodore Garg, Vijesh Garg, another intellectual who will be speaking to us on the civil-military fusion as part of the Communist Party. So I think very fortunate. What we'll do is I have about 170 minutes minus the 5 minutes we've already done. So we have 4 speakers, so I'll divide it equally among 40 minutes each. I will request the speakers to try and finish the presentation in about 25 minutes so that we have about 8 to 10 minutes of an interactive session where after each, we'll have the interactive session after each speaker. Otherwise, at the end, it becomes a little too heavy and too generalist. So we'll do that. And at the end, we have about 10 to 15 minutes still left over, hopefully. Because we'll finish at 2:20. Because 2:20 is lunchtime, and as I know, hunger leads to anger. I don't want an angry audience. So we'll have at 2:20 we'll finish it off. But last 15 to 20 minutes, I think we'll have an open house again, and we can discuss anything under the sun regarding the PLA and the Chinese. Now, why is understanding China important? I'm not a China man, honestly. I've had more than my share of tenure along the line of actual control. I visited China, blah, blah, blah. I've been studying China, but I'm not a China man. I'm a China fan. I respect them. And we should start respecting our adversaries. In a number of forums, I find we take China very easy. We think that we are the best. Definitely we are the best. But never underestimate your adversary, please. Never overestimate yourself. Your adversary can surprise you, and that's what China has exactly been doing. And understanding China, I think, is the most important thing. Unfortunately, India and Indians do not understand China and Chinese people. And more than that, more unfortunately, China does not understand India and the Indian people. So we have 2 nations, the largest nations in the world, with 38% of the world's population, the Asian giants, 21st century, the Asian century, 2 neighbors, nuclear armed neighbors, and we don't understand each other. Our relationship is a set of contradictions. We have cooperation, we have coordination. We have conflict, and we have many contradictions. Whether it is along the line of actual control, whether it is the Indian Ocean region, or we have this non-contact warfare by China and India. We have the same space which we vie for in the South Asian region, in the Southeast Asian region, in the world, both looking at being global leaders, and India is the global leader. We are risen far, we are global leader. So understanding China, I think, becomes very important. Let me take a few minutes and start with the overall thing. Xi Jinping, and I'll not go back to history, not really required with this audience. Xi Jinping became the supreme leader of China on the 14th of March 2013, right? Wearing all 3 hats. Leader of the Communist Party, the president of China, and the chairman of the CMC, the 3 major hats. And the 15th of March, he signs the Kochhar agreement within 24 hours of his taking over. So the jury is still out whether that was the first final table or it was by design or default. Chinese don't do anything by default; they all do it by design. Let's leave it at that. So he signed the Kochhar agreement, giving 40 years of lease to China of the Kochhar port. So that's an indicator. Next, on 29th of May, on the sidelines of the BRICS summit at Dublin, he met the Prime Minister of India, and everything was the same, except for there was a very major shift in the positions. What is that shift? The wording was just the same. In the end, talking about the boundary question, and it's not a boundary issue, it's not a boundary dispute, it's a boundary question. Talking about the boundary question, Xi Jinping said, let us resolve the boundary question as early as possible. Something which went unnoticed in many quarters, including the PLA daily of the 30th April, did not carry this as early as possible. They carried the script as was given to them, which was, it's a long-standing legacy dispute and we'll resolve it at a later date and blah, blah, blah. So why I'm bringing this out, because it's easy to, we have to understand why something has happened in the last 7 to 8 years, which is very important to us. So that was the 29th of April, 29th of March. When I was a DGM of that time, when we saw that, and I just happened to see this, and when we saw it, I think, yes, it was as early as possible. So there's a position shift in China. Why? Because Xi Jinping follows the philosophy of Mao Zedong. And Mao's philosophy was for inclusive land borders. Now, why inclusive land borders is a question still China needs to answer, because he did not say inclusive maritime borders, he said inclusive land borders. And China, following Mao's philosophy, has resolved the boundary with 12 of the 14 nations with which it shares the land borders. The only two being India and Bhutan. And Bhutan, because we have a tri-junction, both in the east and the west, where we have a dispute or we have a perceptual difference, right? And on the 15th of April, we have the first major shift along the line of actual control where the PLA comes and occupies Rakhi Nala bottleneck in Deshmukh place, 19.5 kilometers inside the line of actual control, as we perceive it. Line of actual control is a line of perceptions. There is no demarcation, there is no common understanding, it's a line of perceptions, right? So why I'm giving this sequence of the first 1 month of Xi Jinping? Because Xi Jinping is a powerful leader, a man in a hurry. To understand China, we've got to understand the leadership. And to understand the leadership, we also have to understand the capabilities of the leadership and the military capabilities in particular. Right? Economic we have covered yesterday. Technology we covered. So it is we'll talk, and the mindsets we have covered, which is very important. Mindset very important. So today when we talk of the military capabilities, we have to see the military capabilities as defined by the leader, Mr. Xi Jinping. And when this happens, we resolve it. They go back on the 5th of May. Why? Because Li Xiang, the Prime Minister's first visit after the new dispensation, was to India on the 14th of May. So we said either you go back, the visit doesn't take place. Something similar which is happening when Wang Yi visits Delhi and wants the Prime Minister to visit Beijing for the BRICS summit, and we give a cold shoulder, rightly so. So this is what happens in March, April, and May of 2013. And in September 2014, after Mr. Modi, another strong leader, and India is India, and we have a strong leader at the head of affairs, and Xi Jinping visits India. And after coming, and he visits India, he goes to Ahmedabad, we see a fantastic high-profile visit, two of them on a Jhula, Gujarati Jhula. And simultaneously, we have the Chumar incident, where China PLA comes into Chumar, right? So why I'm giving this is to understand why the military capabilities of China and the PLA have undergone a change since 2013, how the modernization has taken place, which will be covered by the panelists, what are the reorganization, what are the capabilities, what are the weaknesses, what are the opportunities and threats. And let me not go on and on, but between May 2014 or September 2014 to March of 2020, about 6 years, the two leaders, Mr. Modi and Mr. Xi Jinping, two strong leaders. They're the top 5 leaders of the world today. They meet 18 times. Right? So we have to see this. There is the growing sort of our trust. 2017 Dolam happens, 73-day standoff, which is resolved by the two leaders, the strategy guidance. Everything is going fine. And then on 19th October 2019, we have the second informal summit at Mahabalipuram, a high-profile summit again, a high visibility summit, flashed all over the media and the social media and all over with the two leaders, just the two of them spending a lot of time together after Wuhan, right? And in 2020 May, and I put the date as 4th of May. I may be wrong. I don't have any inside information. I read whatever was given. On the 4th of May, we have the first indications of China's forward deployment, and it's not only abrogating, violating the 5 agreements of peace and tranquility, which is on which for 45 years we had peace and tranquility. The last shot in anger was fired on 25th of October 1975. So, and in between this time, China has used this time to reorganize the PLA. The theater commands come up, the integration comes up. So we have to understand what does it imply, what are the capabilities actually, and what does it imply for us. Why I say that is that India has to ensure peace. And when you deal with China, you ensure peace from a position of relative strength, right? I'm not saying that we should be as strong as China. We cannot be. Their defense budget is 5 times ours. The combat ratios are higher. We don't need to be. If you look at I'm sure the panelists will show the integrated theater commands, the Western theater command, the biggest command, right? So when we talk about 2.5 front war, I hope and pray that at the same time, somewhere in Beijing, 3.5 hours down the line, This is the difference between us and China. Someone is talking of 5-front war, right? Okay, so I'm, we have to be pragmatic. If it is 2.5-front war for India, it's a 5-front war for China. China doesn't have only to contest India. It got South China Sea, it has got Korea, it's got Taiwan, it's got East Sea, it's a Mekong issue. So China has got issues. See? So I'm not saying that Indian armed forces and Indian military and Indian economy should be as strong as China. No. But I'm talking about relative strength. And here I will give example of relative strength in the recent, what has happened. 15 rounds of talks. We managed to push back the sensitive Pengmonsu. Why? Because we went and occupied, it was strategic signaling, nothing more than that. A QPQ option went and occupied the Kailash region 20 and 30th of August 2020. And what happened? We could push back in Galwan. Galwan happened, we gave them a befitting reply. I think the retaliation was fantastic. It was very good. I'm not talking about numbers. I don't believe in a balance sheet. We lost 20 of our soldiers. My heart pains, it aches. But we gave it back to China, otherwise we would have seen many more Galwans happening. After Galwan, there's no escalation. If there's been no de-escalation, there's no escalation also. So let us look at the positives. Right? So that is why I think when we talk of a 2.5-front war, we got to put it in context that China too has many strengths and it has many weaknesses. So we'll have to talk to them from a position of relative strength. And when we talk about position of relative strength, it is from the tactical level, operational level, at the strategic level, at the geopolitical, geostrategic, geotechnologies also, economics also. It is not only, the whole has to be seen. And that is why I think this particular webinar has been conceptualized exceedingly well, taking everything together. Before I end, let me give a small thing and I'll reserve my things for later on. When I talk about relative strength, I must quote an incident. I have been deployed on the LAC on a number of occasions. I'll quote a small incident on the LAC. This happened in Dokala, which overlooks the Dolam Plateau. It is not Doklam, it is Dolam. So we have changed it from Dolam to Doklam. It is Dolam, and which overlooks. So we had this patrol of the Chinese PLA patrol comes in. They come in. Chinese PLA, Communist Party, they are very predictable. They will come year on year at the same time, plus minus 24 hours. And this patrol come to on the Dolam Plateau. Our patrol was we also move alongside, keeping a couple of meters difference. So one of the PLA soldiers he saw, and this is a Gurkha Johnny, and I've already got of Gurkha Johnnies. Right? He comes and from his rifle he unhooks the magazine and it runs inside full speed. It was down slow, right? So there's a major incident. There was such things don't happen. But there was another Havaldar of his, Gurkha again, smart chap, very quick on his feet, good thinking, boxer. He also sees a PLA soldier, topi ulti, cigarette lagi hui, weapon hanging. So this chap goes, he runs, he takes the weapon and runs to our side. Okay, I'm talking relative strength now, at the grassroots level. So their officer comes to our officer and he pleads, he said, sir, let us finish it off, you return up, this thing will return you, we'll never do anything like this. And please don't report the matter. Right? So what I'm trying to say is that he pleaded and did not report the matter, but then the matter reported to me. So it gives the psyche of the PLA also. So when we talk about relative strength, they should know from a demeanor on the ground at the LEC, right to our capabilities which are spoken about, and let us also not follow the Chinese in hiding our strengths. We should also propagate our strengths. Don't bide your time, propagate our strength because Chinese respect strength. So I think I'll finish up out here for the time being, and I will hand over to the panel, starting with General Rajan Kochhar. He'll cover the military capabilities, deciphering the military, not decoding. I was trying to find out a difference between decoding and deciphering. I think so. Let us decipher the military capabilities, and then we'll start decoding China. I would rather understand China rather than decode China because Chinese are mysterious people. And I'll also come into a few of my experiences when dealing with the PLA, both along the LAC, in China, and in various conferences and border person meetings. Thank you very much. Over to General Kochhar. Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir. You have already explained in a nutshell what is the capability and the relative strength in terms of our adversary, China. unfortunately, over the years, we have not focused enough attention on China. We were more centric towards the Pakistan side on the western border. And on the northern borders, our own capability was not built up. So it has only happened in the last few years that the Indian Army has built up its capability, habitat, and other things. Uh, 3 years and a half, I have retired, and after that, I have been very much fascinated by this enigma called China. And that is the reason I wrote my first book on China, Breaking the Chinese Myth. It was important to understand China. It was important to visualize their capabilities in relation to us. And it was important to break the myth, which possibly people still carry a image of 1962. To relate one incident, I was traveling in a cab and I just happened to talk to the driver about his impressions about China, and he said in a very candid manner, "Sir, China से तो कौन मुकाबला कर सकता है? China is extremely strong और हम तो कहीं नहीं." So this is a myth which has been formed in the hearts and minds of the people, and to some extent it has been substantiated by the propaganda and the psychological warfare which China resorts from time to time. So it is important to have forums like this. I am grateful to Yashish today that he has focused on this very important topic to understand China, because most of us, as rightly said by General Bhatia, do not have a fair assessment about our own adversary. So we have to understand this, and today I shall be covering the military aspects, and we have extremely eminent speakers who will be touching upon the naval and the air force aspects. China, as we all know, is a country which is the most populous on earth. It accounts for a fifth of the world's population and 10 million square kilometers, and it is the third largest country after Russia and Canada in terms of size. Its forge, as we call it, its armed forces or military, is got 2.25 million troops with approximately 10 lakhs of active soldiers. And it's important for me to actually make everybody understand. I would be progressing my further part of the talk in the form of a presentation, because certain maps are involved, certain understanding of the capabilities can only be arrived at after we have a visual look. So I will start with a brief background of the emergence of the Chinese military might, because it's important to understand how China has grown over the years. The Central Military Commission is the apex authority which controls the entire army, air force, and navy of the Chinese Republic. So now, if you, it all started with Deng Xiaoping, who instituted major changes between 1985 and 95 in terms of doctrine, organization, and equipment. The major mindset of the Chinese changed only after the Gulf War. After they saw the Americans using that kind of technology in the warfare, the Chinese strategy also then modified itself to a technological based army, and they started with a white paper which was written in 2013 when Z came into power. He basically spelled out timelines, and his first timeline was to complete military modernization by 2035 and transform the PLA into a world-class military by the end of 2049. So it's important to understand that today I am given to understand that China is approximately 2 years behind this timeline. So it's not much with the COVID also coming in, the other distractions in the world arena. China is just 2 years behind its timelines, what it set for itself. And the strategic goal which these Chinese aimed was the informatized armed forces and capable of winning informatized wars by the mid of the 21st century. So basically, when we go along understanding the PLA army, we must keep in mind two important aspects. The first is the strategic aspects in terms of weaponry, and the second is that a warfare which is intelligentized, artificial intelligence coming into place, blockchain coming into place, and advanced computing coming into place. So we must consider the way Chinese have built their army of today. It is based on these three aspects. And lastly, let us not forget their concept of three warfares. And the most important, which the Chinese are actually using even today, is the psychological warfare. And for that, they have structured specific organizations, and we'll be talking about these organizations as we go along. The highlights in the brief before I start my talk, and we all will, and I'll actually focus on all these aspects during my talk, but to give a brief introduction on my focus areas of today's talks, I have made this slide which is there in front of you, and I'll be explaining a few aspects on this slide, and in detail I'll be explaining on all these issues as we go along. The first and foremost objective of the Chinese was, if it has to realize its foreign policy objectives, it has to strengthen the military. And for that, the Chinese PLA or the PLA Army, Air Force, and especially Navy has transformed itself from a regional force to a trans-theater operation force. Today, we see how active the PLA Navy is in the South China Sea, and what all the PLA Naval has modernized over the years. It is now almost on par with the US Navy. The next important aspect is that to make this Chinese PLA army more potent, it resorted to theaterization. So 5 theaters were there, and we'll be talking about this in detail. And 13 group armies. China used to have 18 group armies earlier. So after this military reforms, it is now transformed into 13 group armies, and we'll be talking about these as we go along. The biggest transformation which the Chinese have actually done is having combat armed brigades. it is a very potent concept. If it had to realize its shortcomings, it has now 78 of these in number. They have been categorized into three categories: heavy, medium, and light. 5,000 troops each. The heavy has a preponderance of tracked vehicles. The medium has a preponderance of wheeled vehicles, and the light combat armed brigade is primarily used in the mountains. And these combat armed brigades have combat arms battalions. So this organization I'll be getting into as we go along. And apart from these combat armed brigades, the Chinese also have 6 additional brigades with each group army. Basically the air defense, the aviation, and the sustenance and the logistics and all that. I'll be also covering that. The focus on the strategic strengths of the PLA has been in the areas of missile technology, space, and electromagnetic spectrum. So these 3 areas we have to understand are the strengths of the PLA army: missiles, space, and electromagnetic. And we'll be discussing this as we go along. And to achieve these 3 strategic strengths, the PLA has created a rocket force, a strategic support force, and a joint logistic support force. And all these are theater level organizations. Today, the Chinese have the most advanced long range air defense system, S-300 and 400, taken from the Russians. And the most important aspect when we are talking about missiles here, Chinese are expanding their intermediate range ballistic missile capability. Today, they have almost 200 of these in their arsenal. And lately, I have also observed, right from 2019 onwards, the PLA has been focusing on combat arms training and exercises. And for that, on the likes of Fort Irwin, which the United States have got a joint training base, the PLA also made a similar base. Trying to understand the theaterization, as we see on the screen, as General Bhatia also said, a 5-front war. China actually faces a threat from 5 sides, you can say, but not in the manner that India is facing, because most of these threats or these borders are passive. They're not active and generally quiet, except maybe the southern and the eastern side. And of course, the western is also equally active with us. And if we analyze this theaters, you know 5 of them, and this slide would explain it slightly better, that what are the countries which the China is facing as far as the threats are concerned on each of these theaters. So if we start in a clockwise direction, starting from Western Command or the Western Theater, we have India, Mongolia, and the Central Asian republics. We also have Afghanistan in this area. Basically the southern part of Mongolia. Then if we see the northern theater, we have the northern part of Mongolia, Russia, and Korea. On the central, it is basically the protection of its capital Beijing, as also the East China Sea and Korea. On the eastern side, it is the South China Sea and Taiwan. quite active as of now. And on the southern side, it is Vietnam and Myanmar. So now if you juxtapose this entire theater, the Western theater has two group armies. So all these group armies, 13 of them, have been divided and distributed to each of these theaters. So as far as the Western is concerned, we have 76 and the 77 group army, which is of concern to India. And of course, all other groups have also been given their share of group army, as you can see on this slide. So now when we analyze, I would now like to focus our attention to the Western Theatre Command, because that is of extreme relevance to us. This Western Theatre Command is oriented towards India, as also the counter terrorism missions along the China, Central Asia borders. We know China is concerned. This Wuhan corridor is there, I mean, where these militant activities from Afghanistan is taking place. Then we have the Western Theatre Command, which is geographically the largest, and especially with India, it is now quite active. And here we have two group armies, two military districts, the Xinjiang district and the Tibetan military district. We have 3 Air Force bases and 1 rocket force base. And if we have the look at what China has in our Western theater, it is shown here. The group army headquarters is also shown, and where all the combined arms, the brigades are deployed, the infantry divisions are deployed, the special operation brigade. So you can see that when China is confronted with India, it is not the entire PLA army of the Chinese which is going to fight us. So we must keep this at the back of our mind when we work out our threat assessment, that it is not this entire PLA army which is going to fight against us. It is only these two group armies which will get into action. Seeing the profile of this military strength, I want to highlight two important areas here. One is the armored vehicle strength, which is almost 71% of the PLA army. And the second is the rocket projectile strength, which is 6.4%. So you can imagine how much importance these two areas are going to play in any future war. Now, the most important aspect of trying to understand the adversary is their missile capability, and we are talking about here the PLA rocket force. So, what is this rocket force? So we can we have 4 types of missiles which PLA has in its arsenal today: ICBMs, MRBMs, SRBMs, and the ground LCMs. So these are important areas which we must understand once we are analyzing the capabilities of the Chinese ballistic missiles. Okay, this slide actually gives us in a nutshell, what the Chinese have and what are the capabilities, starting from up to 700 kilometers to 13,000 kilometers. The Chinese missiles are able to cover a very, very large area right up to the Guam Islands in the United States. And if you have a look at their areas of penetration of these missiles, you can see starting from 1,000 kilometers radius, 2,000, 4,000, and it carries on and on and on up to 13,000 kilometers. So that is the capability of this rocket force which the Chinese have recently created. Then we have a strategic support force. So this is very important to understand this, because basically it deals with the ISR systems, cyber, electronic, and the psychological and information warfare. This is divided into two major departments. One is the space system, and the other is the networking system, which has your entire information and your psychological warfare base. And the hierarchy is that it reports directly to the CMC, the Central Military Commission Authority. Coming now to the end part of my presentation, what all I have discussed about the capabilities of the Chinese army, let's try to assess these capabilities, because basically whenever we assess the capability of a nation, it has to be done under three major heads: the strategic, the operational, and the tactical. I just came across on the internet a very interesting survey, which is based on weighted averages, 5 sub-measures, and 22 indicators, which ranks China's military capability as 66.8, second after the US. Russia is third in terms of military capability. And we have to see this entire full picture when we talk about technology, when we talk about weapons. Who is going to use these weapons? It is the human resource. So this important aspect of the Chinese is under question, because today we see there is a lack of experience, a lack of cohesion in their human resource. The important aspect is that you can introduce high-tech weapons to a trained soldier, a well-managed soldier. It is going to give you dividends like the US Army is doing. But when we talk about the PLA, we still find their soldiers to be ill-trained and ill-managed. General Bhatia also brought out this important aspect. So the basic ingredient is combat experience, which the PLA is lacking today. And that is why when we talk about capability assessment, we have to look at this important aspect. And to overcome this, China is resorting to doing military exercises, trying to train their men as much as possible. But the three important intangibles which I would like to relate in the end, which must relate to capability assessment, is leadership, training, and morale. We talk about missiles, we talk about space, we talk about cyber, we talk about artificial intelligence, we talk about technology, and you name it. But the most important ingredient to win a war is your leadership, your training, and your morale. So unless you have these three things in place, your capability to win over the adversary will always be under a question. So I leave it in the minds of our audience that these are the three areas which I feel, or I have assessed, where the PLA is found wanting today. And lastly, what are the security implications for India? Having understood the capability assessment of the Chinese, we also have to think about our own strengths and weaknesses. And today we need to have in place a deterrence capability so that a caution is placed on China not to enter into a conflict. It's important to understand that China has built up its missile arsenal, its cyber, its ISR capabilities, and it is therefore very important for the Indian Army also to build up on this, especially our ISR capability. We have started with the integrated battle group concept. It must be given teeth. More of mechanized elements have to be included into this battle groups, and whatever deficiencies of equipment is there, it needs to be made up. With this, I have taken my time, and I hope I've been able to cover all the major issues as far as the military capability is concerned. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm more than certain that even the Chinese PLA CMC could not have done a better job than this. Covering in 25 odd minutes and a very comprehensive, with clarity, excellent presentation. It's a learning for me. Having studied China, the PLA reorganization especially, what you have covered is absolutely to the point, to the dot, what concerns us. It is actually deciphering the Chinese military capability. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. Before we go any further, let me through the question. We still have another 5 to 7 minutes of question because you're short on time. The first question is from Prashant. It says, how can you match Chinese prowess in the field of artificial intelligence and cyberspace, as we lack institutional where civilians can train and contribute towards developing offensive capability space as well? So that's an interesting question. The question is regarding Chinese AI and cyberspace, which is the multi-dimensional, the fifth and the sixth and the seventh dimension of war. And where we lack is a synergy between, of course, usually covered by Commodore Garg for the Chinese. But question goes to the panel. We'll take this in the end again. How do we have a fusion in the civil military, because the civilians do not have, as it says, developing offensive capabilities in space as well? Would you like to take it on, please?
Yes, I would just, because I know we have experts in this field, but my assessment is that we have already made a beginning, sir. We have a defense cyber agency which has been created because we understand the threat which we will have from the Chinese in the field of cyber warfare. But the second aspect is that there is a technology fund which the government has created now, basically to encourage the startups. Because if any kind of technology, it has to come to India in a faster time frame, so it has to be through the younger generation. So we have already tapped IIT and Chennai as the base for starting this transition of artificial intelligence, and other institutes are also taking the initiative now. So with this technology fund, which is almost, I think, started with around 500 crores, it is further going to get expanded. And the IDEX is also another initiative of the government where the innovation in defense technology is also coming up, and we are encouraging a fusion of the civil and the military into this. So these aspects, I feel the government is already taken note of, and they must have a roadmap, because what is actually lacking in all the government initiatives is there is no roadmap. So we need to have a roadmap for all activities, and possibly we must give a maximum time of 5 years, because beyond that, if we go, we will not be able to accomplish what we aim to accomplish. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'll just take a second and come back to you. Yes. Commodore Deshmukh, please.
Sir, if you permit me, I just would like to add to what General Sir has said. Basically, sir, we need to be very cognizant that today the basic training facilities into the field of artificial intelligence and machine learning are not up to the mark in India. That is one part. Secondly, sir, when we talk about the requirement of what we call in a generic term as a data scientist, the requirement for the India as such in the both military and the civil sphere we have and the availability, it is drastically, the ratio is falling short. So what is happening, sir, the civil world is competing very highly with the high pay packets for the AI and the ML enabled scientists and the people. So that is one of the aspects what we would look into, sir. So as the General Kochhar has said, sir, we have to have a proper roadmap where the training facility as well as the retention capability once the people have been trained for the defense work are the challenges which we need to address. Thank you for giving me the opportunity of adding this, sir. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. I think it's been very well answered. I just put in my 2 paisa bit. I think we got to optimize the TA model, the citizens' army, and especially in the AI and the cyberspace, whatever our manpower is, we got to optimize that and key them into our system somehow. They can keep working. They don't have to be a full-time, AI specialist. Or he keeps working wherever he is, and every 3 months or 4 months, every quarter, he comes for a workshop for about, let's say, a week. Comes to central place where he briefed on the requirements, because these are something like sleeper cells. They don't have to be active. We have the capabilities. It is not that I would like to expose my cyber capabilities today. No, it's in time and space that I'm looking at, and that is the time when I need the resource. I'm not a dedicated resource. We have so much of willing manpower available who will do anything for the nation. Why don't we not trust them and bring them in and give them need to know basis? Give it to them and exploit their expertise in both AI and cyberspace. I think that is one of the suggestions I have, and that will take care of civilians who want to contribute. Why should I say civilians? Indians who want to contribute to the security of India. Today we should look at India as one and not as military civil. That fusion has to come in. The next question is a very interesting one by Anjali Jha. It says, how will integrated theater commands help us to combat China? A simple question, but a complicated sort of a very complicated answer, I suppose. So let's keep it simple. Let's try and see what can be done. General Kochhar.
Very good question, because see, why China has gone into integrated theater, because in tomorrow's war, you must have a commander needs to have the entire resources of warfare at his disposal in a very, very short time. You cannot look back over your shoulder. You must have the resources under you at every point of time, because the battlefield scenario is going to be so fast. We have seen today in Ukraine war how Russia has gone into integrated battle groups, and they have been able to move very, very fast. and counter the air defense as well as the anti-tank capability of the Ukrainian army. So, therefore, in case we have to have integrated theater, so the most important is the northern and the western. We need not get into theaterization of the entire Indian army, because right now there will be requirement of a huge amount of resources, which possibly the Indian government doesn't have at its disposal. So we need to do it in a graduated manner, and it is very important, especially Northern Command under the present circumstance, it gets theaterized. I know it's a difficult task, but Bhatia says, it's easier said than done. But that kind of synergy is required now between the Indian Army and the Air Force, especially as far as the Northern Command is concerned. Navy, if you look at the maritime aspects, it's almost more or less theaterized. So we need not have to devote much into the maritime command, but definitely the northern and the western part would require the attention of the governments.
Thank you, General Kochhar. Khosla, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, my views are slightly different on the subject. You know it. I'm not against the concept of theaterization. And let me start with saying that it is one way of achieving synergy, not the way of achieving synergy. And theaterization or no theaterization depends on your domestic compulsions, your threat perceptions, your prevailing situations, your capabilities, your economic conditions, a whole lot of factors. And also on the geopolitical situation prevailing in and around you in the region as well as in the global scenarios. Keeping all these things in mind, my views are slightly different. And before I come to that, sir, I also I have another theory about China. I've been following China. I'll cover it subsequently. In my mind, their theaterization at the moment, what they've done is temporary, and it is on their own land. And if you see why the reason is, as per me, is Chinese army or the defense forces are owned by the party, and they use them extensively to rule the country. And if you see the theaters, and if you compare the map of theaters with any other map of road, railway line, the population density, you will realize why Western theater is so big, because it's very sparsely populated. It's for easier for them to rule with one theater, whereas on the eastern side, where the population is very, very dense, you have separate theaters. Anyway, that is one of the views. And in my mind, the China will go into US way, a bigger theater covering the globe once it has the full expeditionary capability, that is global expeditionary capability. Having said that, in Indian context, to my mind, priority for theaterization comes much later. We can do much more before that, before we go into theaterization as such. And considering the factors which I covered earlier, time is not yet right for going in for theaterizations based on land or based on capability or based on service. And maybe in the future, when we have enough economic clout and we have enough economic power, enough resources to spare, maybe we can go in for theaterization, and which could be South, Indian Ocean region or South China Sea, or far away from our land borders, and entire of India could be one theater, that is the homeland. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Khosla. We have two views, and that's why I purposely requested you to give your views. This platform is to generate thoughts. We are not the decision makers, but we can always generate thoughts. And the question is very simple. It's how will integrated theater command help us to combat China? I think with China, it is a war prevention strategy. It is a strategy to deter. And how do we deter? By becoming a military power. Unfortunately, we are the third largest armed forces. We have the combat experience. We are battle hardened. Everything is good. But India the Indian armed forces, the Indian military is not a military power. It's a military force. Okay, let's bottom line. We are not a military power. And India, we have to live with the idea of India, with the aspirations of India to be to a world leader, to a global leader. We have to become a military power. I think that is where we can deter. The war prevention strategy with China will be very important. We have one more question from Mr. Ajit Sandhu. He's sitting in Brussels, which is the center of all world geopolitics today, Brussels, the European Union. And his question is, have the Chinese moved on from Sun Tzu's art of war? Are they still following the same philosophy where Sun Tzu said, appear weak when you're strong and strong when you're weak? I think we've got to be very careful about what is being said here. It gives a lot of thought. And the supreme art of warfare is subdue the enemy without fighting. That is what Sun Tzu said. And China follows that. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of entry. So these three, I think, dictums of Sun Tzu still hold good. And the last one is a very important one. And that is why we are discussing this deciphering and decoding China. Unfortunately, China also doesn't understand India. नहीं तो Xi Jinping 15th of April 2013 को he would not have come to Depsang. He wanted to resolve the boundary question, putting pressure on us. It doesn't work out. There's an opportunity because Mr. Modi is a strong leader. Mr. Modi could have, he had the political capital, he had the political clout. He could have sold a solution to India. He was the only one who could have done it. I was so hopeful in 2014. There's a strong leader who can do that. There are two strong leaders who can, strong leaders always give you opportunities. And China did not understand India. And they, know the enemy, know yourself. So we are not trying to, relearn the whole thing. So, Mr. Sandhu, I totally agree with you. And we can have the comment from the panel. Please, General Kochhar, first shot at.
So you have to understand one thing, that China follows the policy of active defense. And it is a correlation from what actually you have mentioned here. If you relate it to the events in Ladakh, today China is holding more than 1,000 square kilometers of the disputed area on land without fighting a war. Has China occupied this land with any kind of opposition from India? No. So it is basically this philosophy or principles of war, which is known as active defense. It does not wait for the adversary to take an action. It always wants to take its own action and try to create a psychological impact on the adversary to prevent him from taking a military action. So you are absolutely right in your assessment when we say that China actually believes in winning a war without fighting. In Taiwan also, have you seen China resorting to any kind of an air strike or a missile strike? No. It's sent almost 200 aircrafts in the last 1 year into the airspace of Taiwan. It is basically that psychological warfare, trying to intimidate your adversary and possibly you make him surrender after that. So it is following these principles of war, as we have said.
Thank you very much. I think we'll have to be running. We coming to you, Commodore Deshmukh, please. I'll have to be the timekeeper as the chair. So, I will not speak too much. Just 2 points to sum up an excellent presentation. And thank you very much once again. But I would like to, you made a statement that we did not focus enough on China. I don't think that is the right. I will not say that we did not focus on China. We didn't have the resources to focus on China. Our comfort zone was Pakistan. But let me also say that after 62, we started raising, all our raisings were for the northern borders, right? And then in 2009, 2010, I'm talking 2009, 2010, post annexure, which we all know about, we raised 2 divisions, right? We located air assets in Hashimara, in Guwahati, in Bagdogra, in Chabua, in Mohanbadi. It's not that we did not, but our resources were limited and we had an immediate mischievous neighbor in the west. Then in 2013, and to give the date as 17th of July, we got the sanction for what is loosely called the Mountain Strike Corps, which is not the Mountain Strike Corps, sorry. It was the accretion forces. It consisted of 90,274 men or military men. Right? It was cost of 64,676 crores over 8 years. We didn't have the money, so we didn't raise it. And I thank the Chinese for doing what they've done. They came in and they halted. They had that pause. They gave us the time to go in for a proportional, equitable deployment. Gave us the time to do a strategic rebalancing. That's not Sun Tzu. That's not Sun Tzu. Sorry. So what Mr. Sandhu is trying to say is very right. Somewhere they have got confused because they didn't understand India. So let's do the same mistake of not understanding China. Right. So I think we'll finish this for the first speaker, for the first panelist now. Thank you very much. We are at 140. Thank you, General Kochhar. Thank you very much again, and thank you for the
questions.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Deshmukh, without much ado, all yours on the naval aspects.
Thank you, sir. Chairman, sir, co-panelists, and friends. I would like to compliment Indic Researchers Forum for bringing this interesting aspect of understanding China's naval capabilities into the focus. The presentation would be covered as shown on the slide. I must thank the Harjit sir who really pointed out what I wanted to say. The great strategist Sun Tzu had said, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of the 100 battles. In similar vein, Indian strategist Chanakya had said, by being alert, you can keep an eye on every movement of the enemy. These words aptly signify importance of understanding China's naval capabilities. Before we delve into the subject, it would be important for us to briefly understand the current geopolitical scenario which India is facing. India currently has multiple problems on its platter to tackle: pandemic effects, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and more importantly, China's issues, instabilities in Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions, which have a bearing on India's geo-economic, political stability, as well as security. Impact of these issues on India's global prestige can be very significant, and the deft handling of the situation has become very necessary for India. The task is really arduous because of the limited resources, as has been brought out by General Bhatia. Though various measures have already been initiated by India to stabilize its economy and tackle the situation in various other forums, a lot still needs to be done if we want to be relevant in Indian Ocean region because of the current geopolitical scenario in Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. These regions are undoubtedly very critical for security and economic well-being of India. China's hegemonic behavior in Indo-Pacific region in general and in South China Sea in particular, militarization and creation of the artificial islands are all detrimental to the freedom of navigation and the rule-based order in Indo-Pacific region. It is indisputable that open and inclusive Indo-Pacific is important for maintaining peace, economic and political stability, safety and security in that area, as well as in IOR. In addition, China's illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing activities and surreptitious survey operations in IOR also pose a danger to the long-term economic stability and security of India and other littoral countries in the region. As if this wasn't enough, predatory financial investment by China in the countries like Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka et al. Have changed the geostrategic calculus in IOR. Further, China's String of Pearls project also has a significant implications for India's security. China-Pakistan nexus as a part of the Belt and Road Initiative, that is the Gwadar Port, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, pose their own problems for India. On economic front, Regional Comprehensive Economic Pact has its own unique implications for India. In view of the above, it is imperative for India to have a comprehensive strategy to tackle the problems posed by China and maintain its importance in Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions. This is where a clear understanding of China's naval capability assumes of great importance. Before we move forward, let us see the brief historical perspective related to People's Liberation Army, in bracket Navy, PLAN for short. The Chinese Communist victory in 1949 was basically an army victory. The PLA had no naval arm, but toward the end of Chinese Civil War, China had captured some naval vessels and the facilities. The first PLA naval force, known as East China People's Navy, was created on the 23rd April 1949 in Jiangsu province. The first PLA Navy school was established in November 49. The Naval Air Force was formed in 1952. The three PLN fleets, the East Sea, the South Sea, and the North Sea fleets, were formed between 1995 and 1960. Throughout the 1950s, the PLA was modernized with Soviet assistance. A shipbuilding industry was developed, which, with emphasis on building small and the medium ships, patrol crafts, and submarines. PLA Navy operations in this period largely focused on defending the Chinese coastline against attacks by our forces and assisting the ground troops in capturing offshore islands. The role has changed a bit since then. The PLA Navy saw appreciable expansion in 1970 and 80s, with significant increase in number of conventional submarines, missile-carrying fast attack crafts, production of indigenous missile-carrying destroyers and frigates, nuclear-powered submarines, and sea-going replacement ships also began. May 1990, a Chinese naval task force composed of missile destroyers, replacement ships, missile-range instrumentation ships, logistic vessels, and naval air elements. By the 1990s, the role of PLA Navy had shifted from coastal defense to active offshore defense in supporting China's role as a regional power and protecting the country's coastal economy and maritime interests. Consequently, PLA Navy started investments in the anti-access, anti-denial, what we call A2/AD capabilities, resulting in the fast expansion of its surface fleet and modernization of its submarine forces. As per the available information, the PLA Navy has already achieved the first step out of the two-step strategy in its modernization process, comprising development of the green water capability, which allows it to operate beyond what we call the first island chain, an arc swung from the Vladivostok to the north to Aleutian Islands, Japan, Okinawa, Taiwan, the Philippines, Brunei, and the Strait of Malacca to the south. In the second step, by the middle of this century, the PLA Navy will develop blue water capability that can operate in the high seas beyond China's continental shelf in order to ensure China's access to the trade routes and economic resources throughout the region. The typical example being China's development of the naval vessels and the forces to the Gulf of Aden to protect Chinese merchant ships against the Somali pirate attacks. Now allow me to focus your attention on the PLA Navy's force structure. The PLA Navy has an estimated strength of 260,000 personnel, including 25,000 naval aviation, 7,000 marine corps, and some 27,000 coastal defense forces. The forces are organized in the three fleets: the North Sea Fleet headquartered in Yuandao, the East Sea Fleet headquartered in Ningbo, and the South Sea Fleet headquartered in Zhanjiang. Each fleet consists of the surface forces, submarine forces, naval air force, marine corps, coastal defense forces, as well as various training, logistics, and the maintenance element. Each fleet has 2 or 3 major bases and a number of minor bases. Major naval bases include Lushun, Guangdao, Huludao, Shanghai, Zhoushan, Guangzhou, Jiangxing, and Jisha. China's state-owned shipbuilding industry is grouped into 2 industrial consortia: China State Shipbuilding Corporation, CSSC, and the China Shipbuilding Industry Corporation, CSIC, both of which are capable of building naval vessels of all types. Major construction facilities for surface vessels are located in Dalian, Shanghai, Wu, and Zhangdong. Conventional submarines are constructed in Wuhan and Shanghai. Nuclear-powered submarines are constructed in Huludao. Jingnan looks at the aircraft carrier construction. As far as the command and control is concerned, it is similar to the other service branches of the PLA. The command and control of PLA Navy originates from the Central Military Commission exercised through the PLA Navy headquarters in Beijing. The PLAN is headed by a Navy commander and the Navy Political Commissar, who are assisted by 3 deputy commanders and 2 deputy political commissars. Let us now see the current status. In 2020, the PLA Navy overtook the US Navy to become the largest navy in the world by number of commissioned warships, but may not be in the quality. This is particularly evident when it comes to the most patent ship classes, aircraft carriers, cruisers, and destroyers. The PLA Navy's objectives are quite clear: to achieve dominance in Indo-Pacific and Indian Ocean regions, to become major regional power and competing maritime power capable of checkmating USA. Thus, China has worked concertedly towards addressing military imbalances vis-a-vis USA, and these efforts have grown fruit. Sweeping reforms to an outdated military saddled with too much manpower have allowed China to allocate resources to the capital and technology-intensive maritime and aerial domains. The 2019 Defense White Paper made it clear reference to the significant downsizing of the PLA Army in favor of PLA Air Force and PLA Navy, as well as PLA Rocket Forces. In April 21, the PLA Navy commissioned 3 new warships together on the same day, a remarkable achievement: a guided missile cruiser, a nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine, exactly the types of ships that analysts have said PLA Navy lacks in the squares of the US Navy. China also has issues with its fighter aircraft and the AEW aircraft, but that should not be a reason for India's complacency. So far, though the Chinese Navy has built up itself in the numbers, there are still some doubts about its quality in terms of capability of the ships, aircraft carriers, fighter aircraft, and AEW elements. Now, going towards China's fleet strength, it is as shown on the slide. The numbers are impressive, and it should really make all of us to sit back and ponder upon them. When compared to India, China dominates India in almost all spheres by a ratio of 3:1, which is an alarming ratio. We really need to understand the implications of this, and we have to be prepared to tackle the challenges which are going to be forced upon us by the PLA Navy. Now let us analyze impacts of all this on the India's security and what remedial measures are required to be taken. It has been observed that the most major military powers, including China, have started downsizing military manpower in favor of the technology. Even countries facing active conflict with the border problems as grave as India's, basically, so we need to do the think upon and set in the remedial measures wherein, sir, it is very, very important for us that we have to build our fleet strength, in which we have to have the aircraft carriers, three in numbers. So basically, India needs to have three aircraft carriers, so that at any time we'll have the deployment of two carriers on the eastern and the western waterfront. We need to have the stealth frigates equal in number, so that we can, across the board, guard our maritime boundaries all over. We need to have our submarine strength built up. That is one issue on which we have been lacking, whether they are the conventional submarines or whether they are the nuclear submarines. We have to build up our missile capabilities, so that we have the nuclear missiles to complete the triad, so the submarine launch missiles. Along with that, we have to develop our capabilities in the Andaman and Nicobar Command, so that we are able to monitor the surreptitious operations of China in the Indian Ocean region, and we are able to take charge of the situation and maintain our primacy in that region. For this, we really need to build our relations with the ASEAN, BIMSTEC countries, as well as we have to do the tightrope walk of maintaining our relationship with America, Russia, as well as we have to balance it out along with the littoral countries where China has made big inroads. If we take care of all these requirements, I feel we will be able to address the challenges and we'll be able to take on the PLA Navy as and when it warrants. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. That's the best part of the Navy. They can do anything, anytime, anywhere. Thank you very much for this very excellent presentation. I think despite the shortage of time, I disrupted you, my fault. But the Navy is known to be one functional disruptions. I'll not take much time, and we have one question for you. We'll take at the end of it. But the organizers are very unhappy with me for having exceeded their time. Straight on to Marshal Khosla for the PLAF for the PLA Air Force. Let's decipher their capabilities, please. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes,
can you hear me, sir?
You are audible and everything's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the organizers and Indic Research Forum and Chennai Center for China Studies for giving me this opportunity. And I feel honored to be on this panel, very distinguished panel. And the topic is very, very relevant and very close to my heart. Actually, it's my PhD topic also, but only one part of it, that is deciphering China. How does his brain work? What are the factors which go into decision making as far as China is concerned? But having seen the program for this 2-day seminar, I think it covers almost everything. Very, very interesting. So what I'll do is, time is short, I will go quickly get onto the job. My charter today, or what has been given to me, is to cover the aspects related to PLA Air Force, that is the Chinese Air Force, its capabilities, strengths, weaknesses, and which way are they heading. So what I'll do is I will cover a little bit of perspective, which is well known. I'll just quickly rush through it. And then I will cover a little bit of modernization, which has already been covered, and I'll just again rush through it. And then I'll spend some time on strengths and weaknesses and give some recommendations in the end. And I'll not be doing bean counting as such. That is available in the local media, the numbers and everything. And the views which I express are mine and not necessarily of the Indian Air Force. I retired exactly 3 years back on this day. In 2019, 30th April. And since the time is short, at times I may go supersonic, as the Air Force is known to be. Okay, so perspective-wise, the importance why we need to study China has been covered adequately. One is that China is racing with US, and they have the timelines as already covered: 2020, 2035, 2049, 49. They want to be world-class. What it means, if you read in between the line, is that they want to be number one in the world. That is the aspiration. And as far as in certain areas, they've already gone ahead of the US in terms of investment in technology. They're investing much more than US. As far as Navy is concerned, is already covered. Numerically, they've gone ahead of them. As far as reorganization is concerned, we talked about JSSG. Actually, Americans have realized that they had commands dealing with these aspects and these domains, but they've realized that the Chinese model is much better than their model, and they're thinking also of reorganization into looking into the future war. And as a result, because they're racing with the US, they're pulling at a very rapid pace ahead of us. That is one perspective. And second is the collusive threat which we face in Pakistan. Pakistan has become a vassal state of China, become a puppet of this thing, China. They are fully now reliant on China. Their defense industry is being bolstered. And more important is interoperability, which is being increasing between China and Pakistan. It becomes a problem for us. Even if Chinese presence is there on Pakistan land, then it becomes a problem for us. And third is attitude of China towards India, adequately covered. Some analysts say 3 E's, that is encirclement, entanglement, and ensnarement, which explains self-explanatory. And General Bhatia said that we are the only country is not solved the border problem. And I call it pressure cooker theory. They keep the pot boiling just short of war and try and achieve their objective without by salami slicing and those issues. Okay, so bottom line is that we need to increase our capability and capacity. That is the deterrence. Deterrence includes capacity and capability, and even if it is at the cost of development. Now coming to the modernization process, the Chinese military is owned by the party, and in the yesteryears, their orientation was not towards war fighting. I mean, they were into commercial activities, they were into all other activities, and their model was Russian model, a very tactical force, and Navy and Air Force were subsets of the PLA, that is Army, and so this was the situation. And as the economy started improving, the military power increased and their aspirations also started increasing. And then they realized that for their aspirations, they need to do much more. And I think Gulf War was a turning point where they studied the world model, studied the world militaries, and went into a very focused way of modernizing their defense forces. Their aim was to, these are the two drivers also of the China when they deal with the world and modern dealing. One is, to get the lost glory back. And second is not let the century of humiliation reoccur again. And so 90, they went in a very focused way. They concentrated on equipment, technology, weapons, defense industry, reorganization, all facets of, military power. And they made it very time bound. Actually, this is a very good model to adopt. There is time bound, they're given the timelines, and there's a debatable whether they're achieving it on time or be delayed. But they're almost on time as per me. And 2049 is their ultimate limit, guided by documents in an adequate number of documents to guide this thing, enough number of white papers and top-down approach, and then adequate monetary support. So these are the highlights of their focused modernization system. The last and most important of the modernization is that they're forward-looking. Technology, they're investing in a big way, looking into the modern warfare of gray zone, non-kinetic warfare. That is why the JSSG was formed, which we talked about earlier. If you go by the highlights, I think 3 or 4 things I need to highlight in the modernization. One is they're going into big way into expeditionary capability. They have realized that in case they need to be world power, they need to look beyond their borders, look beyond their homeland. So they have started investing much more in the Indian Navy, PLA Navy and the PLA Air Force. And they've given it more importance. Appointments are being given to these services. Adequate, equality is being given to these services, and they are investing a lot in these two. Then, second thing is they are investing in the Rocket Force, that is long-range vectors. Second RT is a different service altogether. And the reason is the philosophy of no-contact warfare, which I'll come back to subsequently once again. Third is military-civil fusion. I don't want to go into details, which is another model which is worth emulating. There is a separate talk on it under 6 heads, and that's a very nice model. And last is the JSSG. Once again, General had spoken a lot about the JSSG, where they put cyber, space, info, and electronic warfare all into one domain, offensive capability, defensive capability, and given it a service status. This is looking forward into gray zone and non-kinetic warfare and their basic philosophy, which they still believe in the Sun Tzu and the history. Okay, now coming to PLAF. As I said, I'll not be doing bean counting as such and not comparison on a broad macro level. So if you see, first is, if you see numerically, numerically, overall, they are way ahead of us. They have 2,000 to 2,700 combat odd aircraft, and the second thing is the defense industry is very good, the indigenous defense industry, so they can produce more number of aircraft if required. And only weakness in this or the saving grace is that as far as India is concerned, they cannot apply all this force simultaneously because of restrictions of number of operating surfaces, the restrictions of high altitude restrictions. So that is the weakness as far as this thing is concerned. But they're trying to overcome these weaknesses by more operating surfaces, having dual use operating surfaces, trying to overcome high altitude problems with the training and with the technology. So work in progress is in this field. The second is the robust defense industry, which we are struggling as far as we're concerned for Atmanirbharta. Lately, a lot of impetus has been given to it. They are creating their own aircraft. They are assisting Pakistan also to produce their own aircraft. And they are not only into older aircraft, they're talking about 4th, 5th, and 6th generation aircraft. The weakness as far as this defense industry is concerned, as far as air power related is the engine technology. They're still struggling and trying to get into engine technology. Now, as far as quality is concerned, I said 1/3 of the aircraft are modern aircraft of 4.5 generation. But the weakness or doubt is that these are the claimed performances. They've not been proven anywhere. They're not demonstrated anywhere. So, and whatever Chinese say, you always have to take it with a pinch of salt. So it's not, and they're very, not very open to showing or displaying these capabilities anywhere. And we talked about earlier, the next aspect is Intangible General said about 3. I will add a 4th one, tactics, which is very important in the air warfare. So training and tactics is one thing which is they're lacking. They're not battle hardened. The tactics is borrowed tactics, and they used to do exercises only with Pakistan, and now they're addressing this issue and they're trying to do exercises with more countries and learn more. And the work is in progress, but they're and it is visible even in the Doklam. No, sorry, not Doklam. The general corrected it to Dolam. Even during the Dolam crisis, I was there in the Eastern Air Command, and we could see that they were flying newer tactics, and as the days were progressing. It is said that, as far as China is concerned, there is to be, and China and India I'm talking about, there is to be T3 advantage in favor of India, that is technology, terrain, and training. So technology, China has gone way ahead. Terrain will always remain, but they're trying to overcome by technology and training, as I said. And the training at the moment, training and tactics and these aspects, they are lacking behind. And I hope we continue investing in this and stay ahead in this field at least. And that is what matters. Then next is, the philosophy of their warfare is no contact warfare. They're saying they're adverse to body bags. That is because of the adverse demography of the age profile. Every youngster is looking after at least 4 to 5 old generation people, and they cannot afford to have body bags. So why I'm saying no contact warfare is, if you see, they're investing much more in long range vectors. General brought out in great detail, the missiles, forces, the second artillery. And second is, even for the kinetic warfare, they're going into unmanned platforms in a very, very big way. And they're following Sun Tzu's dictum of winning the wars without even application of force by the 3 warfares: media, psychology, and legal. So that is why the philosophy, I say, is more related to no contact warfare. Okay, as far as two more factors which I will just compare. One is the combat enablers, which includes air-to-air refueling as far as air warfare is concerned. Your AVACs, which are very important. These 2 aspects: weapons quality and quantity. They are. This is also work in progress, and they are comparable in terms of quality and quantity. They will be increasing gradually. So I would say they are comparable at the moment. Then space-based ISR, they're way ahead in terms of resolution, in terms of revisit time. Very soon they will reach 24/7 capability, which their aim is to space-based this thing. So that is where they are way ahead of I think a lot of countries, not only India. So bottom line is that at the moment, a lot of work is in progress. Some fields they're ahead, some fields we are ahead, and I think Indian Air Force can make a difference in case of issue at the moment. But bottom line is that we need to step on it, and we need to do much more in case we need to retain this capability of holding them. Okay. A few recommendations, not necessarily related to air power, some related to air power, some related to general. One is, the lesson is very straightforward: self-reliance, Atmanirbharta. And actually, Ukraine war has further reinforced that requirement, and also given more clarity to self-reliance. It is not only self-reliance in defense industry and defense production and technology infusion in defense. You know, if you see Ukraine, you need to be self-reliant in all aspects of warfare. That means whole of government approach we talk about, and all the tools of statecraft, including, diplomatic, including economy, including information. So we need to be, because China has developed this art of turning anything and everything into a weapon. So we need to do much more in that field. Second is, we need to be forward-looking, looking into the Chinese way of fighting, fighting in the gray zone, fighting in non-kinetic warfare, fighting in the domains of space, cyber, information, psychology. So we need to, our changes, whatever we are doing in defense services, our reorganization also, which we are doing, I think we need to give this aspect a much higher priority in our reorganization as well. I think we are doing it, but our pace is a bit slow, and we need to step up on the accelerator. Next is, we need to invest big way into technology. That is the future. And in our case, what happens is, first the technology comes into civil use, and then it migrates into military use. I think we need to do parallel processing, where the technology comes into the military in parallel, along with when the work is going on for it to be utilized in the civil world. And what other technologies everyone knows about it? Quantum, hypersonic. Hypersonics is going to change the entire ambit or the gambit of the warfare, not only air warfare, every type of warfare. AI, nano, robotics, I've coupled them together. Very, very important in the coming years. That is why these swarms and drones are coming in a big way. And China has invested heavily into swarms and drones. And as far as air power is concerned, I think engine technology and stealth technologies are the two technologies which we need to really invest and put our money on. Just two or three, I think I have some time available with me. Two or three issues I'll tag which are not related to air power, but I feel they're very important. One is, this pandemic has thrown in the issue of using biological warfare as well, CBRN, what we call it, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear. I think we need to step on our CBRN capability and take it more seriously in terms of training, in terms of equipment, in terms of protective infrastructure, protective gear, operations in CBRN environment. I think
should just wind up easy.
Yes, sir. As I said, just two. Next is but I have still time, sir. I have 16 minutes. I have my timer on, sir. Infrastructure, we need to.
I get wrong my calculation, unlike the Air Force.
Okay, infrastructure, we need to, go underground. We need to have protective infrastructure, alternate services. We are doing a lot of work on highway operation as far as air operations is concerned. Then last two are, demography change. We need to be very careful about. China has mastered this arts again. It's doing its own Xinjiang province, Mongolia and Tibet. Closer home, again, Tibet against Bhutan and Nepal. Andhra Pradesh, they built up some last year, some villages, and also we need to be careful. And the last one is water wars. We need to be careful. In Dolam also, there were incidents when the sudden surge of water or the water turning black happened, and they didn't give any reason for it. So we need to be careful about these things. So what I've done is I've quickly touched upon few of the things. I will say that this is just tip of the iceberg. And in the question answer session, maybe we can go even more, and we need to do much more as far as our capability is concerned. So I've finished 3 minutes before my time, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Khosla. Absolutely. It's a precision strike, just like the one we did Japan. So absolutely, a with you. And I'm mistaking the time a little. Whole bad football, very bad maths. So without thank you very much. It's absolutely a learning process. Absolutely, experience. Precision, absolutely. And we'll switch to the last speaker today for this session, Commodore Garg. Request you to get on, and we need to finish the time. I've been getting warnings. So we'll finish about another 8 to 10 minutes. Thank you very much. We had a question: will you use the hypersonic missile not change the utility factor? of aircraft carrier in Indian context. Commodore Deshmukh, may I request you to take this on, please?
Basically, we always have got this debate whether aircraft carrier is safe or unsafe. We are talking about hypersonic missiles, we talk of this. But let's remember that if I put all my hypersonic missiles on Andaman Nicobar Command on land, and somebody lands an ICBM missile onto that land, the whole ICBM fleet, all my capabilities are gone. We have to remember that today we have to have a floating airfield for the tactical surprise as well as the strategic planning of your attacks. From that angle, the aircraft carrier has got its own importance into the fleet, and accordingly, we really need to have aircraft carriers to be deployed on both our eastern and western seaboards to take care of them. And the aircraft carrier can by itself take on the hypersonic missiles or other missiles if they came in. I will stop here because it is important for Commodore Garg to give his presentation.
Thank you, Commodore Deshmukh. Commodore, all yours, please.
We all know China is a rising power in science and technology, and that this development is raising concern all around because China's ambitions, is China's assertiveness, and China's opaqueness of the goals. And we all, as the China watchers, are looking at it very closely. We just heard about the China's army capabilities, air force capabilities, as well as naval capabilities. And when we look for any China-India or the imbalance or disparities or the relations, and want to match up with that. So what do we look at? This is one strategy which China has taken ahead of us. That is the military-civil fusion. Now, term is not new, if people say it. The civil-military integration has been long. USA have been doing it. In fact, we go back in World War I, when the UK were making the ships. Then came the US, 1950 onwards, the aircraft, ship, missiles, and of course the RMA came. Israel came with a new technology called driving the civilians with the militaries, and they came up with the military power in productions. Japanese came with a new thought of concealing the military, arming the civilians culture. But what the China has taken in the military first, the military civil fusion, and it's from basically originate from the CMI of USA, and they actually go by that. Now, if you look at what they want to do, this is a master strategy which she has given in 2014, and basically based on the innovation in key sectors with basically dual use technologies and spatial advanced technologies. Now, what he has done is, if you look at the journey of this in Mao and Deng in 1980 onwards, they gone through the 4 modernization, defense convergence. They came to the overlapping of defense to civilians, the technology with a spin-off and spin-ons, and finally it was Jiang Zemin the Hun Jintao, which added the component of military personnel education, logistic, and infrastructure. This is what House come to. But in 2016, if you look back, go back to 2006, in fact, 2006, they came back with their medium and long-term plan, and they look at it as China to becoming, at some about in the morning slide by General Kochhar, at 235, and then 2035 and 2049, as the Chinese becoming the world-class Army, Navy, Air Force, the armed forces, and taking on their competitor, that is the US. Now, what is it implies? It's basically systematically reorganizing the Chinese science and technology enterprise to ensure a new innovations, simultaneously advance economic and military development. And this master strategies actually incorporates all the national strategies. It has a component of 6, I couldn't see a slide here, I'm sorry, is a 6 plus 3 plus N plus 1. The 6 are the core sectors, 3 are the totally different sectors, that is the space, the maritime, and the cyber. N part takes on the nanotechnology, N takes on the AI, and on the cutting edge technologies today. And the last part, which is the one that is the going out, which China counters into their BRI, their Silk Road, and their getting out of this system. Now, how they're going about it? How they're going about it? The China took the route of, they want to get at the Western route with the US route. So what they've done is they are taking a route of IDAR. That is, first is the introduction, what technology they are looking at, where it is, what we need. Second is digestion, get the technology, digest, understand it. Third is, then you reinvent the wheel. And this is the classic case they did in case of aircraft carriers. India has been operating aircraft carrier from 1961 onwards. They got an aircraft carriers in 90s. That is a disused carrier from Ukraine. On a merchant ship carried to China, and today they are making the second aircraft carrier. This is what China has done in this rule of MCF. Now, how they are doing it? They are taking the route of, as they call it, the Chinese, the research paper says it's called PIAD. If you convert into English, it's called plan, invest, acquisition, and dissemination to stakeholders. They plan what they want to do with this technology, how much they go, where they want to apply it. Army, Navy, Air Force, anywhere they want. They invest the money in that, invest in the sector, invest in that institution, invest with a particular service. They acquire what they want through this culture, and finally they disseminate to downwards for the use to civil if required. The vision very clear, 2049, to be a great nation, to be a superpower, and counters the Western technology. That is the vision given by Xi Jinping in 2014 address. And this master strategy is for economic development and military power. It's the whole of the government approach. All instrument of the CCP and the institutions, the sectors, the SOEs, all are part of MCF. That is and the best part is Xi Jinping chairs. When he chairs a meeting, it happens. This is what we don't have. In our case, it doesn't happen that way. It is also, this strategy came with a consensus. It's a political will of the nation to go becoming a superpower. It's a political will of the whole China with the CCP, with ambitions to take us there. And that's what is a consensus there. So political will at all levels. That's how they've gone. Now, by doing this, what they're doing is they say if US can do like DARPA, they have an institution called DARPA US, they can make a GPS. GPS came for the military, and today GPS is all around. They are copying this concept, making they are making the clusters of these research centers. They have combined the defense research sectors, civilian sector, universities. They are universities which have been targeted and given responsibilities for particular technologies. They are connected with them. They are talent which China, because when they say, I use the word acquire the knowledge, in that it is the overt and covert all means. There's a US paper on this, how to counter China's this approach, because Chinese have invested on their talent. Talent, you go to US, he's studying US doing research, but actually he's working for a particular technology to bring back. I recollect many years back when I was doing my IIT, I'm talking about 80s, before joining the Navy. I came to know somebody who was studying there and working in a particular field, in nuclear field. Today, you know what he was doing that time, much of my senior of mine. So Chinese invested on the talent, and they gathered the technology, whether it was US, whether it was UK, and they gathered it overt, covert, all means, and this is a main part of acquisition, and S&T comes under them. So then you see, like somebody mentioned in the beginning, one of the panelists mentioned that today, like we have our Prime Minister, he's a strong leader. So is the Xi Jinping, is a strong leader. When he directs, when he monitors, when he asks the results, it's happened. So MCF is nothing new. All countries have gone. We are going through it, very slow process. Initially, they went SOE route, but they realized now they use all the conglomerate with them, of the Google, Alibaba, all are contributing to them. This, and they use every state element into the system, and it is I will say dictum, and the paper says it's a dictum, and is being monitored for the highest body. Other part which comes is I got a slide. I just read it from here, the highlights from here. But a key finding of this research on this, the military civil fusion is China's path to victory in a global confrontation of system, because China believes now that modern information warfare is a system confrontation with a nation. It is not only military alone. It is the state, is the governance, is the civil system put together. So you got to have military civil fusion that way. Second is it articulates near and long-term goals. The near-term goal of MCF is deep development characterized by streamlined process and resource sharing to achieve interconnectivity, higher efficiency, and optimal allocation of resources. And the long-term goal is, unify all military and civilian strategies, synergies of industry to make the strategic ability which China needs. MCF has not disturbed the work done by the previous leaders, that is, I told him of 80 onwards. In fact, they have given the acceleration to the existing systems, initiatives.
Commodore Garg, I'll have to request you to wind up.
Winding up, sir, just 2 minutes I need. 2 minutes I need.
Oh, great.
And remember, the MCF authorizes basically the barriers they're removing. And this is what we in India, we got to lead. We are all talking art, Nirvata, 2 things, 3 things. No, we haven't removed the barriers. We haven't removed the barriers in the systems. I'm in IIT Chennai today. There's so many projects goes, nobody clears them in bureaucracy. So if you see it, we need a military, bureaucratic, industry, civilian, all alliance together to copy this model. It's a fantastic model. And General Bhatia said in the morning, China, we got to learn if we want to compete with them. This is one model we military people, scientists, and the bureaucrats, and everybody in the government got to learn from there. If we don't remove the barriers, we don't synergize our effort from universities to R&D to military, what we need, I don't think we can catch up that. I stop here. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Commodore Garg. Thank you very much. I can see the passion. I know that you know the solutions, and I can see a little bit of helplessness. Am I right? I think I am. Okay. My apologies for having exceeded the time to all the participants, to the organizers, and especially to the panelists. There's so much of knowledge there, and we could have really done something better, except for the chair. I don't think I did a good job in giving the time to the panel. A lot of questions. Let me tell the participants, please post your questions, and we will mail it to you, the answers, our perspective of the whole thing. I'll address the panelists who spend some time. As we are out of time, thank you once again to the organizers, to the panelists, and to the participants. I'll leave it just 2 points. One, of course, the last one. We have a technology vision. We all talk about technologies and civil military fusion. We have a technology vision document 2035, scored by the Prime Minister of India. And this is the technology, the TIFAC, the Technology Information Forecasting and Assessment Council, has brought the document. It's available on the net. You can have a look at it. Unfortunately, it covers 13 domains, and defense is not one of them. Period. Okay. That is where we are. And that is where I think Commodore Garg was trying to say things. Second point, having deciphered China, what do we do? I think we need a 3D strategy for China. Simple. Defend the LEC, dominate the oceans, and deter China's aggressiveness by binding to balance with other nations where we have congruence and convergent interests. Multilateralism, what do you call it? But we have to deter China's aggressive behavior all along, not only along the LEC, everywhere. And the strategic concerns, the strategic vulnerabilities lies in the ocean. And that is where I think we need to integrate. And that is how this seminar or webinar is so very important. Thank you very much to the organizer. Time for lunch. And as I said earlier, hunger leads to anger. So no more angry participants, please. Thank you. Jai Hind.